They thought leaving me off the guest list would break me. Picture this, your own cousin is getting married, and the entire family is celebrating, except for you. No call, no invitation, no explanation, just cold silence. I scrolled through their perfect engagement photos and fake smiles, feeling like I didn't exist. But here's the truth, they forgot who I've become. I don't beg for a seat at anyone's table anymore. So, when the big day arrived, while everyone else pulled up in cars, I descended from the sky in a helicopter. And when I stepped out, every head turned. I never thought my own family could make me feel like a stranger. Growing up, my cousin and I were inseparable. We spent summers riding bikes through our neighborhood, sharing secrets under the old oak tree in my backyard, and even promised each other that we'd stand by each other's side on our wedding days. She was like the sister I never had, the one person I thought would always have my back. That's why the silence cut so deep. I first heard about the wedding in the most casual, almost cruel way. Scrolling through Instagram one morning, I saw a photo of her trying on a wedding dress, surrounded by relatives, my relatives, grinning in the background. At first, I assumed the invitation must have been delayed or lost in the mail. But days turned into weeks, and no envelope arrived. Then I overheard two aunts talking about the venue, the guest list, and even the seating arrangements. My name wasn't on it. It felt like a punch to the gut. I sat there wondering what I had done to deserve being erased from one of the most important days of her life. My mind replayed every holiday dinner, every childhood sleepover, every moment we had laughed until our stomachs hurt. How had I gone from family to outsider without even realizing it? When I confided in a few friends, reactions were mixed. Some shook their heads in disbelief, furious on my behalf. Others tried to defend her, suggesting maybe it was a mistake or a smaller wedding. But I knew better. This wasn't an oversight, it was intentional. And the humiliation burned deeper because the rest of the family seemed content to go along with it. I battled with myself for days. Part of me wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, to scream and cry and let her know how much she had hurt me. Another part of me, the quieter and prouder part, told me to stay silent. If they didn't want me there, why should I beg for a seat at a table where I clearly wasn't welcome? Still, the sting of betrayal lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being deliberately cast aside. Looking back, I can see the cracks that had been forming between my cousin and me long before the wedding. We grew up like siblings, but somewhere along the way, life pushed us onto different paths. After college, I landed a great job in the city and eventually started my own business. My success became a point of tension I hadn't anticipated. While I was working late nights and climbing toward independence, she stayed closer to home, leaning on the family and following the traditional path everyone expected. At first, I didn't notice the shift. But over time, I caught the whispers. During family dinners, I'd hear small, sharp comments disguised as jokes, remarks about me, thinking I was better than everyone else, or too busy to come around anymore. My cousin would smile politely, but she never defended me. In fact, sometimes I caught her joining in, laughing along with the subtle digs that stung more than I wanted to admit. Then came the first real sign of division. A minor disagreement over our grandmother's birthday party spiraled into something bigger. I had suggested hosting it at a nice restaurant to make it special, while she insisted on keeping it simple at home. Somehow, that discussion turned into gossip that I was showing off and trying to outshine her. I brushed it off at the time, but I noticed the way some relatives started to distance themselves, as if siding with her was the easier choice. Over the months, that quiet wedge became a wall. Invitations to small gatherings grew less frequent, and whenever I did show up, I felt like a guest in my own family. My cousin's subtle coldness, paired with the family's favoritism toward her, made me feel like the odd one out. When I realized I hadn't been invited to her wedding, it all clicked into place. This wasn't an oversight, it was a declaration. A quiet, cutting message that I was no longer considered part of their inner circle. The wedding wasn't just a celebration of her love, it was a symbol, a line drawn in the sand that said, "You don't belong here." And that was the moment the hurt began to harden into resolve. After the initial sting of betrayal dulled into a cold ache, I sat in my apartment staring at the wedding dates circled on my calendar. Part of me wanted to erase it, to spend the day pretending it didn't exist. Why should I acknowledge a celebration I wasn't welcome at? But another part of me burned with a quiet need, not for confrontation, but for recognition. If they wanted to erase me, maybe it was time to remind them who I had become without ever saying a word. One evening, over coffee with my closest friend, I vented my frustration. She listened silently, then leaned forward with a glint in her eye. "Don't fight them," she said. "Show them." Those 3 words sparked something in me, a vision of making an entrance so unforgettable that it would live in their memories long after the last wedding photo was framed. The idea of the helicopter came to me like lightning. It was bold, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. No doors slammed, no raised voices, just a silent, jaw-dropping statement that I existed, that I thrived, and that I would not be diminished. I spent the next week planning every detail meticulously. I booked a sleek black helicopter that could land near the venue's open field. I scheduled the flight to arrive just after the guests had settled, ensuring maximum attention. I invested in a custom-tailored outfit that demanded presence without a single word. I even practiced stepping out of a car in front of a mirror, imagining the helicopter blades whipping my hair, the moment frozen like a scene from a movie. I also arranged for a friend to capture the moment discreetly, knowing the images would inevitably ripple through social media like wildfire. I could almost picture the relatives scrolling in disbelief, realizing the very person they excluded had become the star of the show. As the day approached, I felt the old pain transform into a simmering satisfaction. This wasn't about ruining their wedding or starting drama, it was about reclaiming my power. And deep down, I knew the moment those rotor blades cut through the sky, my family would finally understand the cost of underestimating me. The morning of the wedding arrived with a strange, electric energy humming in my chest. I woke before my alarm, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts alternating between nerves and quiet confidence. Part of me still ached from the rejection, but another part, the stronger, bolder part, felt an almost thrilling anticipation. Today wasn't about begging for inclusion. Today was about writing my own narrative. The sky outside was a perfect blue, streaked with wisps of white clouds, the kind of day photographers dream about. I dressed slowly, savoring each step. My outfit was sharp and elegant, a sleek black suit with subtle gold accents that caught the light just right. My hair fell perfectly in place, and the subtle scent of my cologne felt like the final touch of armor. When I caught my reflection, I saw someone powerful, untouchable, someone ready to make an entrance they would never forget. As the helicopter approached the pickup site, I heard the faint thrum of its blades before I saw it crest the horizon. The sound alone stirred a rush of adrenaline. By the time I climbed aboard, my nerves had steadied into a calm, almost cinematic focus. From the air, the world seemed small, and for the first time in weeks, so did my pain. When we neared the venue, I saw the outdoor ceremony and the guests mingling on the manicured lawn. Then, the hum of the rotors grew louder, sweeping across the crowd like a drum roll. Heads tilted upward. Guests began pointing, shading their eyes from the sun. A murmur spread, quickly escalating to excited whispers, and then phones were out, recording. I could see their puzzled expressions already transforming into shock. The pilot eased the helicopter down onto the open field beside the venue. The wind from the blades sent hair flying and skirts rustling. I waited until the rotors slowed just enough for my dramatic descent. Then I stepped out. It felt like slow motion, the sun catching the edges of my suit, my shoes touching the grass with deliberate grace. I held my head high, each step calm, measured, and unapologetic. I didn't need to smile. The statement was in my presence alone. The reactions were everything I had imagined. Some guests gaped openly, mouths wide. Others whispered behind their hands, recording me like I was the day's uninvited celebrity. My aunts exchanged looks of disbelief. And then my eyes found the bride and groom. Her face froze mid-smile, a mix of shock and something almost guilty. His jaw tightened, eyes darting to guests as if silently calculating the damage to their perfect day. In that instant, I knew they finally felt the weight of their choice, and I had reclaimed my place without uttering a single word. I walked toward the venue with the unhurried confidence of someone who belonged, even if no one had wanted me there. Each step felt deliberate, echoing in my mind like a drumbeat of victory. The guests parted instinctively as I approached, their conversations breaking into startled silence before reforming into hushed whispers. Phones were still raised, capturing every second like I was the main event they hadn't known they were waiting for. By the time I reached the entrance, the first wave of relatives approached, their smiles painfully rehearsed. "Oh, we didn't know you were coming," one aunt chirped, her eyes flicking nervously to the other guests. Another leaned in, whispering, "I'm sure there was a mix-up with the invitations," as though that lie would erase weeks of silence. I simply nodded politely, keeping my expression unreadable. There was no need to explain or accuse. My arrival said everything words never could. Inside, the energy shifted. The same cousins who had ignored my calls and side-eyed my achievements now hovered nearby, suddenly eager to be seen with me. One even asked if we could take a photo together, for old time's sake, her voice dripping with faux nostalgia. I obliged with a slight smile, fully aware of the irony. The person they had tried to erase had become the star attraction of their carefully curated day. From across the room, I saw my cousin, the bride, watching me like she was seeing a ghost. Her smile trembled every time our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I saw regret flicker there. She must have realized that her plan to exclude me hadn't diminished me at all. If anything, the snub had transformed me into a presence too bright to ignore. Every guest who whispered about my entrance only solidified that fact. I didn't stay long. I made my rounds with poise, accepted a few polite conversations, and left before anyone could twist the narrative into drama. By the time I walked back toward the helicopter, I could feel dozens of eyes following me, their stares a mixture of envy, awe, and disbelief. My cousin had tried to make me invisible, but all she'd done was make me unforgettable. I left the wedding long before the first dance, slipping away as quietly as I had arrived. The helicopter blades spun back to life, lifting me above the venue, and with each rotation, I felt lighter. I didn't need to witness the rest of the celebration or endure awkward small talk. I had made my point without uttering a single word, and leaving early felt like the ultimate gesture of peace and power. By the time I reached home, my phone was buzzing non-stop. Social media had already erupted with videos of my arrival. Guests had posted clips of the helicopter descending, the wind whipping dresses and hair as I stepped onto the field with calm, deliberate grace. Comments ranged from shock to admiration, with strangers praising the confidence it took to pull off an entrance like that. My cousin's perfect wedding hashtag was now flooded with images of me, making me the unexpected centerpiece of the day she had tried to keep me out of. A few friends texted laughing emojis, calling me iconic. Even a handful of neutral relatives reached out privately, offering quiet congratulations and admitting they had secretly admired what I did. Some even confessed they felt the snub had been cruel and that my entrance had balanced the scales. Alone in my living room, I reflected on how things had come full circle. I hadn't screamed, begged, or confronted anyone. I hadn't stooped to their level or tried to ruin their wedding. Instead, I had shown them and myself that my worth didn't hinge on an invitation or anyone else's approval. Sometimes the loudest statement is made in absolute silence, wrapped in self-respect and unshakable composure. The wedding would fade into memory, but the story of the uninvited guest who arrived by helicopter would live on far longer. And that was enough. I realized then that revenge didn't have to be messy or vengeful. True power comes from knowing who you are, rising above the pettiness, and refusing to let anyone make you feel small. Never let someone else decide your worth. You define it, and when you do, the world has no choice but to notice. Life has a way of handing out poetic justice without a single argument. They thought they could erase me from their big day, Yet now the moment burned into everyone's memory is the helicopter I arrived in. I didn't need to start drama or beg for an invitation. I simply proved that self-worth speaks louder than any insult. If someone ever tries to make you feel small, rise above, literally if you have to. The best revenge isn't confrontation, it's living so boldly that they can't ignore you.